Hello, class. Welcome to our lecture on international advertising. In this presentation, we'll explore what it means to advertise in a global context, where culture, communication styles, and regional dynamics all play a critical role. We'll begin by examining the power of culture and unpacking concepts like high and low context cultures and cultural dimensions that influence how messages are received across the world. Next, we'll look at patterns of global growth across different regions and discuss how to leverage cultural nuances to connect with diverse audiences more effectively. Let's get started. Now, we're living in a global marketplace where brands are no longer confined by borders. Instead, they're leveraging their brand equity across multiple regions and cultures. To stay competitive, advertising agencies are expanding their understanding of global trends, and one of the most powerful among them is sustainability. Now, sustainability isn't just a buzzword, it's a global movement that influences how brands source, design, and deliver products, and it demands transparency and authenticity. It's also a proven business strategy. Unilever's Keith Weed puts it best. Brands that most engage in sustainability and social purpose are growing fastest. He also said, sustainability has become the only way to conduct business for everyone. And guess what? The data backs this up. According to Cantor Millwood, Brown's Brand Z Top 100 Most Valuable Global Brands, sustainability is listed as the number one global trend shaping the next decade. This means that sustainability isn't optional anymore. It's essential in today's global advertising landscape. Let's look at the five main categories of advertising, each defined by the brand's reach and marketing strategy. First, we have local advertising. These are retail brands with small, localized footprints. Think neighborhood stores or local services. Next is national advertising. These brands operate within a single country, like Kroger in the US. They target a broad national audience, but within one cultural context. On the other hand, regional advertising covers brands that market to specific clusters, like the South, the Midwest, or the West Coast, tailoring their message to regional preferences. Then there's international advertising. These brands distribute across many countries and adapt their messaging to fit different cultural contexts. A great example is Tide, which is marketed as Ariel in India and Mexico. Finally, global brands maintain consistent branding worldwide with minimal changes, even across different cultures. Think of companies like Apple or Nike, whose messaging stays largely the same wherever you go. Understanding where a brand falls on this spectrum helps shape both strategy and creative direction. To create great advertising, and I would argue effective international advertising, you have to understand culture, especially when it comes to communication styles. In high context cultures, like many Asian countries, communication relies heavily on subtly nonverbal cues and shared understanding. Messages are rarely direct or explicit and can often be difficult for outsiders to fully grasp. That's why having local team members who understand the cultural nuances is absolutely essential. On the other hand, low context cultures like Germany and the US value clarity, transparency, and directness. People expect messages to be straightforward and easy to interpret, and advertising strategies often focus on clear, open communication. Knowing whether your audience is high or low context helps you shape the tone, structure, and delivery of your message so it resonates rather than misses the mark. When advertising across cultures, it's important to understand cultural dimensions. These are core values that shape how people think, behave, and respond to messages. One key dimension is power distance. This refers to how much distance people perceive between ordinary individuals and those in positions of power. In countries like China, power distance is high, authority is respected, and hierarchy is expected. In contrast, the United States has a low power distance where people are more comfortable challenging authority and expect equality in communication. Another important dimension is individualism versus collectivism. In individualistic cultures like the US, people prioritize independence, personal goals, and self expression. In collectivistic cultures like Mexico, community, family, and group harmony come first. A great example of this in action is the Oreo example presented in the text. Oreo tailored its messaging for the US by focusing on individual enjoyment and choice, while in Mexico, the campaign highlighted family sharing and togetherness. Understanding these cultural dimensions help advertisers connect more meaningfully with their audiences. Two more important cultural dimensions to consider in advertising are masculinity and femininity and uncertainty avoidance. Masculinity versus femininity refers to whether a society emphasizes traditional masculine traits like competition, achievement, and assertiveness, or more feminine traits like cooperation, care, and quality of life. For example, Saudi Arabia scores high in masculinity, where roles are more traditional and status driven. In contrast, Sweden is considered highly feminine, valuing equality, work life balance, and collaboration. A great example is IKEA, where its marketing in Sweden focuses on simplicity, sustainability, and shared living, reflecting feminine cultural values. Uncertainty avoidance, on the other hand, looks at how comfortable people are with ambiguity or risk. In countries like the Czech Republic, where uncertainty avoidance is high, people prefer structure, clear rules, and detailed information. In India, uncertainty avoidance is more moderate. People are generally more adaptable and comfortable with change or improvising. These cultural factors are deeply shaped by how messages are received and whether they resonate or fall flat. The two final cultural dimensions that we'll discuss here are long versus short term orientation and indulgence. Long term orientation looks at how cultures view time and progress. Some cultures, like China, focus on long term goals, patience, and future rewards. Others lean toward a short term orientation, where people value quick results, tradition, and immediate gratification. Then there's indulgence, which reflects how much a culture allows for enjoyment and emotional expression, especially when it comes to treating children or loved ones. For example, Nigeria tends to be indulgent, where expressing joy and treating others is encouraged. China, on the other hand, leans more toward restraint, emphasizing discipline, modesty, and self control. Before we move on, however, I want to take a moment to mention that the cultural dimensions discussed here emanated from the work of psychologist Gert Hofstede. Hofstede believed that understanding these deeper cultural values helps us communicate better with diverse audiences. As for advertisers, understanding the dimensions will certainly help us design messages that truly resonate beyond surface level visuals and slogans. All right, so now we're moving into global growth. Now, when we talk about global growth, we're really talking about the intersection of economic power and marketing strategy. Success in the global marketplace isn't driven by one platform, one tech company, or one device. It's the result of a much broader digital ecosystem. Digital continues to lead the way in how brands connect with global consumers. But at the end of the day, a brand's success still depends on two key factors: the economic strength of its home country and the marketer's ability to make that brand culturally relevant across different regions. We can see this in the dominance of American brands in global brand valuation rankings. Brand valuation measures how much a brand contributes to its parent company's bottom line and how well it's expected to perform in the future. At the top of the list, Apple, Microsoft, and Google, with Amazon close behind. In fact, 8 of the top 10 global brands are American. The only two non American brands to break into the top 10 are China's Alibaba and Tencent. The top brands span industries like retail, tech, payment, and fast food. Tech leads the way with Apple, Microsoft, Google, Tencent, and Facebook. Visa and MasterCard represent the payment sector, and McDonald's stands strong in fast food. Together, these brands show how global growth relies on both innovation and cultural adaptability. Now, it's very clear that consumer expectations are shaping which brands rise to the top. The brands that enabled comfort, connection, and convenience during challenging times, especially through digital devices, have not stayed relevant but actually gained value. This shift is also changing who leads globally. China's presence in the global marketplace is expanding, fueled by strategic investment, tech innovation, and shifting trade alliances. Meanwhile, the top spending global advertisers reflect diverse consumer needs. We see a strong push toward tech and connectivity from companies like Amazon, Samsung, and Alphabet, and a continued demand for luxury and other self care from brands like LVMH, L'Oreal, and Unilever. And it's not just about reach anymore, it's about cultural resonance. Successful global brands are learning how to localize their messaging while maintaining a cohesive identity, adapting to the unique values, behaviors, and preferences of each region. Even with global stressors, from health crises to political shifts to the rise of social movements, many brands are showing remarkable resilience. In fact, these challenges are pushing companies to become more responsive, more human, and ultimately more global in the best sense of the word. Now, as we examine global growth across geographic regions, it's important to look at how the world's most valuable brands are performing and how they're leveraging cultural nuance to stay ahead. Now, take a look at Figure 5.1 in your text, which highlights the top 10 global brands. At the top, again, we see names like Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft, all American tech giants that have managed to build massive brand equity worldwide. What sets these companies apart is not just innovation, but their ability to adapt their branding and messaging to fit different cultural contexts while still maintaining a consistent global identity. Whether it's adjusting a product offering, changing tone or imagery, or aligning with local values, these brands understand that cultural sensitivity is essential for global success. As we continue on, we'll explore how brands across sectors such as tech, retail, and beyond are navigating regional differences and using cultural insights to drive growth in a global economy. In this part of the presentation, we'll shift our focus to look at various regions, and we'll begin with Africa. Now, Africa is becoming an increasingly important player, fueled by dynamic economies and rich cultural diversity. When advertising here, it's crucial to understand the influence of indigenous cultures as well as the lasting impacts of coloniality and Arabic culture, all of which shape consumer behavior and expectations. Looking through the lens of Gert Hofstede's cultural dimensions, we can compare key markets like Nigeria and South Africa, two of the continent's largest economies. Both countries exhibit unique cultural traits that impact marketing strategies, from attitudes toward power and individuality to approaches to uncertainty and long term planning. Understanding these cultural nuances alongside their economic landscapes is essential for brands aiming to tap into Africa's promising growth opportunities. Photo 5.5 in your text highlights a campaign by Pizza Jungle. The campaign was established to celebrate Nigeria's Independence Day, and it used Nigeria's love of art and fashion to remind people that they control their lives as part of a thriving democratic nation. And the best part, they can still enjoy pizza. All right, so now that we've looked at Africa, let's explore Asia. We'll do so by focusing on some of the most influential markets. China leads the way with rapidly climbing brand values, a flourishing economy, and growing global dominance. It's the powerhouse of the region. South Korea shines in technology and entertainment, with K pop becoming a huge global cultural influence. On the other hand, Japan remains strong in the automotive and tech sectors, continuing to be a global leader. Other key players include India and Indonesia. China and India boast the fastest growing consumer bases, while Indonesia is emerging as a hub for social innovation. Looking at Hofstede's cultural dimensions, both China and India share common traits. They lean masculine and show long term orientation, though China, long term, their focus is stronger. Both are collectivistic societies. They tend to avoid indulgence and uncertainty, but their growing economies bring increasing consumer confidence. China is building a strong mobile first consumer base and spreading its economic influence globally. Unlike the traditional Western approach of universal marketing with slight cultural tweaks, China demands deep cultural nuance. For example, Coca Cola has integrated itself into Chinese culture by becoming part of Chinese New Year celebrations for over 20 years. Marketing in China means taking risk, focusing on speed, and using cross platform, content driven engagement rather than straightforward promotion. Brands must leverage dominant local platforms like WeChat, since American sites like X, Facebook, and Instagram are banned. Rising stars like the alcoholic beverage Mutai showcase the booming Chinese market. Both global multinational agencies and local creative firms thrive by tailoring content for Chinese consumers. Meanwhile, India has become a technology and consumer hotspot, the second fastest growing market after China. Top Indian brands span banking, e commerce, technology, retail, and insurance. Bollywood's massive influence keeps television relevant, while digital growth explodes with new e commerce platforms and hyperlocal delivery apps, including quick service restaurants. India's advertising scene is supported by global agencies and a thriving local creative industry that reflects Bollywood's cultural impact. To add some context to this discussion, Photo 5.6 from your text highlights that a decade ago, Coke introduced clay dolls an iconic Chinese tradition, into its annual Chinese New Year campaign. How amazing! Now, let's talk about Europe, a region known for its rich cultural and geographic diversity. Europe includes countries in the European Union, Scandinavia, Central Europe, and even stretches into Russia, which spans 11 time zones and hosts a wide variety of complex cultures. At the heart of Europe's economy is Germany, the powerhouse of the EU. Germany's economy is driven by an entrepreneurial spirit, supported by numerous micro enterprises. Its industrial and service sectors are major employers, alongside a strong tourism industry. Among Germany's top brands, you'll recognize Mercedes Benz, BMW, and Adidas. Two things driving the German economy today are innovation and sustainability, like Adidas leading in recycling, and the push toward electric vehicles, with German car makers leading the charge. Germany's creative scene thrives in Berlin, home to major advertising agencies like DDB and Saatchi, which are part of large multinational groups. Across the channel, Britain ranks as the sixth largest economy in the world. Its economy leans heavily on aerospace, pharmaceuticals, mining, and agriculture. Britain is also home to WPP, one of the largest multinational advertising holding companies, which owns agencies like Grey, Mindshare, and Ogilvy. Britain's advertising world is known for its small boutique agencies in London, celebrated for their creativity and distinct humor, which is a mix of formal stiffness softened by wit and playfulness. But looking at Hofstede's cultural dimensions, Germany and Britain share some similarities. Both have low power distance and a slight masculine tendency. Both are individualistic, though Britain is even more so. Germany has a strong long term orientation, while Britain is more moderate. Brits tend to be indulgent and more comfortable with uncertainty, whereas Germans are more restrained and prefer clear structure. Understanding these cultural and economic differences helps brands craft more effective advertising across Europe's diverse markets. The next region we'll look at is Latin America. Now, this is a region rich in cultural diversity and economic opportunity. While Spanish is the dominant language, there are many dialects that reflect the region's deep indigenous roots. People also speak English and Portuguese, especially in Brazil. Latin America stretches from Mexico through the biodiverse countries of Central America all the way down to Patagonia at the southern tip of South America. Mexico is the major player, historically the second largest buyer of American exports. However, trade with North America is slowing following the end of the North American Free Trade Agreement, leading to more local and Chinese products entering the market. But looking at Hofstede's cultural dimensions, both Mexico and Brazil show strong acceptance of power distance and high tendency to avoid uncertainty. Both cultures are collectivistic, with a short term orientation. They also tend to be indulgent, though Mexico is far more indulgent than Brazil. Mexico, the second largest economy in Latin America, has a highly diversified economy, from technology and oil production to manufacturing and agriculture. It leads the world in avocado production. Big brands like Bimbo Bakeries, which owns popular names like Thomas's English Muffin and Entermans, have a global presence. Mexican consumers focus on quality, practicality, and price, with e commerce playing the growing role. The advertising scene is a blend of local agencies and multinational players like FCB and BBDO. Brazil's economy, on the other hand, is driven by abundant natural resources, including timber, coffee, sugar, oranges, and livestock. Oil, minerals, pharmaceuticals, and automotive industries also play a big role. Brazilian consumers tend to be young, price conscious, and brand loyal. Brazil leads Latin America in e commerce adoption and has a mix of local agencies alongside global firms such as RGA. Understanding Latin Americans' cultural and economic landscape helps brands tailor their messages to resonate deeply across this vibrant region. The next region we're looking at is North America. Now, this region includes the United States, Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean. The United States and Canada share many cultural and social norms, making their markets somewhat similar in behavior and values. In contrast, Mexico and many Caribbean nations align more closely with the broader Latin American cultural context. Between Canada and the US, there are some notable differences. Canada has two official languages, a parliamentary government, uses the metric system, and even has unique currency. Canadians also tend to show a bit more civility in social interactions. But there are similarities too. Both countries focus on their public service announcements, and these are on important social justice issues. Interestingly, many advertising professionals work across both countries, often within major American multinational agencies like Omnicom. One cultural note worth reflecting on is the US's use of the term American. While 24 countries make up North, Central, and South America, each with people who identify as American, US citizens often use the term exclusively for themselves. This reflects a strong cultural emphasis on individualism and indulgence in the US. But it can unintentionally overlook the identities of millions of others across the Americas. It's important for advertisers and citizens alike to consider the broader implications of how we use words like American in the global context. Photo 5.9 is an ad reflecting Canadians' passionate support for social justice. The ad is one in a series that draws attention to child slavery. The featured website tells the complete story and provides useful information how to fight this global problem. Now let's talk about the Middle East. Now, this is a region rich in cultural diversity and economic potential. Often, the Middle East is grouped together with North Africa, but savvy marketers know this is an oversimplification rooted in colonial history, and each region deserves its own focus. Within the broader MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, countries share many commonalities, especially language and religion, but also have significant cultural and geographical differences. Looking at Saudi Arabia and the UAE, we see some shared cultural traits based on Hofstede's dimensions. Both show a strong respect for power distance and a strong desire to avoid uncertainty. They are moderately masculine and lean somewhat toward collectivism. However, data on long term orientation and indulgence is limited. Each Middle Eastern country has unique cultural nuances that advertisers must understand. Economically, Saudi Arabia is the largest economy in the region, heavily reliant on oil. Its service sector, especially finance, banking, and tourism, is growing. Tourism is boosted by nearly 4 million visitors annually. Now, Saudi society shows significant gender disparities in education and employment, with higher unemployment and poverty rates among non Saudi residents. When it comes to consumer behavior, affluent Saudis prefer quality over quantity, have strong attraction to international luxury brands but show little brand loyalty. They are also highly savvy in e commerce. Advertising in Saudi Arabia is still developing, with relatively few global multinational agencies present. The UAE's economy is similarly oil dependent, but with strong focus on tourism, healthcare, and education. A large foreign male workforce supports the rapid expansion of cities. Shopping malls are not just for retail, they serve as social and entertainment hubs. Like Saudi Arabia, the advertising market in the UAE has limited presence of global multinational agencies, creating space for local creative firms to thrive. If you look closely at photos 5.10a and 5.10b from the text, you'll notice just how sophisticated these ads are. You might also notice a dog and a cat. The campaign speaks to both the hidden allergy that Novamed helps address and the sense of luxury that is integral in Middle Eastern countries. When moving brands into the global marketplace, success requires strategically focused and culturally driven approaches. As Demoy points out, culture matters. Even countries with similar economic profiles can have very different consumer behaviors, media habits, and product availability. Today, three major stressors shape global trends: the global pandemic, ongoing political realignments, and a growing desire for social change. Brand Z's global report helps us understand these stressors by highlighting 10 key trends that influence brand value in today's complex marketplace. At the heart of it all, according to McKinsey, is one driving force that unites consumers worldwide: value. Brands that deliver meaningful value while respecting cultural differences will thrive in the global marketplace. Before we wrap the discussion up, let's take a look at some key global trends shaping advertising today. First, sustainability. This continues to drive consumer expectations. People want to support brands that care about the planet. Health and wellness have also taken center stage, especially in the wake of COVID 19, which reshaped how we view safety, hygiene, and well being. Speaking of COVID, we now face what some call the COVID caveat: the reminder that global crisis can shift consumer behavior overnight. Geopolitics are also a factor. So, trade wars, events like Brexit, and economic instability all affect how and where brands do business. We're also seeing major category transitions, especially in the energy and automotive sectors, as the world moves towards cleaner, smarter solutions. Consumers are craving individuality more than ever before. That's why mass personalization, which is delivering tailored products at scale, is becoming a major marketing factor. At the same time, younger consumers want access to things without the burden of ownership. Think streaming, rentals, and subscriptions. Inclusivity is another major driver. People want to see themselves represented in the brands they support. And finally, there's tech fatigue. As people become overwhelmed by constant digital engagement, brands must balance innovation and empathy and real human connection. These trends aren't just passing, they're reshaping how we create, market, and connect across the globe. Catch you on the next one.